Hey guys, it's Crossroads here. Today I wanted to talk to you about my newest permanent holding, which is Air Test Systems, ticker symbol AEHR. Now, this is an unusual one because it's a microcap and it's one that not a whole lot of people are talking about. There's a few folks on X that are worth following on it. It is, in my mind, a great opportunity. It's a stealth AI play, and we'll talk about why that is in just a moment, what they do, what their financials look like, what I expect from this, why I'm excited about this, and of course, some of the risks as well. So, this is a deep dive. Now, before we get into this, I do want to give a bit of a warning. Because it's a microcap, this has a high degree of beta. What that means is on days where there's no news at all, nothing has changed, can go up or down 8% easily. I've seen it happen multiple times as I hold this position in my portfolio. The other thing that to note is that I'm newer in air test systems. I've been looking into it for a couple of months now, invested in it as well. It's about 7 or 8% of my portfolio just because it's run. I initially allotted about 5% there. And so there are some things that I'll miss. There are some things that I'll overlook. I spent a lot of time researching and studying, and I figured now is the time to go ahead and do the deep dive and also put some information on X. So, air test systems. First, what exactly is this play? Well, in essence, it's an AI play. Semiconductors, we're in the middle of a gold rush, in essence. And air test systems tests semiconductors. They test a variety of those. We'll talk about the variety. Now, they do a few other things as well. They do wafer level burn-in tests for hard drives and other systems as well. But mostly right now, it's about gallium nitride, the material used for silicon semiconductors, not silicon, but instead of silicon semiconductors. So there is a massive gold rush that's happening here across those that are making, designing, and also creating the semiconductors. And there's a big need to test. Now, the reason why air test systems and multiple others, like Teradyne is probably the biggest and best known, are out there is this is a hard problem to solve. It's high voltage. You want a high degree of accuracy. And the greater ramifications there are for what you do, for instance, data centers have massive ramifications. If something goes wrong, you can lose a lot of progress, a lot of time, a lot of data, and it's very, very expensive. And so semiconductor manufacturers, they want this done very, very well. And it's also a niche enough market that those that are making, like TSM semiconductors, they don't see the need to do this themselves. Instead, they buy whole units which are shipped to their place of location, and these are used to actually do the test. So this is, in my mind, very much a clandestine AI play. As long as you think the AI wave will continue for quite some time, air test systems is very well positioned just to benefit from a lot of that. That's not all they do as well. So the way that this works, of course, they have the whole unit that they get, and there's a lot of different units there that Air Test Systems actually has and does. Let me pull up the website and let you take a look here at some of these. Now, this is a company profile. By the way, they've been around for over 40 years, so this is not a company that just starting out that you can't really trust the management. Gain Erickson has been the CEO, I believe, since 2012. He's been in the space and in the industry, and just has a high level of detail with everything they do. So if you look at products, you can see single wafer. So some terminology. A wafer is, rather than just testing one individual silicon unit, you're testing a whole sheet of this. So pretend like this is just one silicon, one chipset, and instead you are testing an entire sheet at the same time. Now, most of the units that Air Test Systems has, they do a multi-wafer level system, a test. And so they have the burn-in on the very high level of voltage to test for any faults or failures in these products. And as a result, of course, the longer you test it, the more that you know that this product is reliable and safe. So depending on the product, depending on the medium, there's a lot of variables there, but Air's systems can all handle it. So we can see single wafer level. We see multi-wafer. They have quite a few different offerings there. We'll talk about some of these, although not in too much detail in a bit. Die level as well. That's a very different type of testing. They do have some recurring revenue that you'll see die and also wafer pack mentioned a couple of times, by the way, in that. Package parts is when it's a completed unit. Well, maybe not completed as far as from the customer stand in mind, but it's basically been packaged with other parts. So you're testing not just the semiconductor, but you're testing that whole system. Now, there are times when that's absolutely the right thing to do. Sonoma and Tahoe are their two main units that they work with. Sonoma, by the way, came over from an acquisition with Incal, which does these packaged part burn-in solutions. And of course, you have the system level tests as well. So that's what they're going on as far as their technology. So a little bit more about each of these and why Air Test Systems is where it's at. Actually, let me throw up this chart here. So you can see how volatile this stock is. This is over the last 5 years that they were trading significantly higher in the 50s. And of course, they're half of that today. They were trading down, by the way, during the April tariff woes, down just above $5. And they've been around a long time. If we hit all, I don't think this goes all the way back to when they first went public. But they were very, very much a microcap. They certainly still are. Here's year to date, and they're accelerating quite a bit. Now, what I want to talk about is this. Why this big peak right here? Now, of course, we can look back here. This is COVID, and COVID did silly things to silly companies all the time. So don't read too much into that, but this is 2023. This is well after this. What this is one of three major types of semiconductors that Air Test Systems provides for, which is silicon carbide. It's sometimes abbreviated SiC. In essence, silicon carbide is used for renewable devices. 70% of silicon carbide products that are being used, not just tested by Air Test Systems, but used as an industry, are in the EV and charging space. So 2023, of course, was a great time for that. EVs and EV companies were doing great things. Renewable, you look at Enphase, like all that was going great. And yeah, we're very much in a bear market. And so we've seen that with their revenue. Now, at the time, they really went after silicon carbide. They're like, hey, this is a great opportunity. We offer a great solution. And the ramification, if your EV or your test system or your inverters actually end up failing on these products, the ramifications are quite massive. And so as a result, there's a high degree of need for accuracy in that, and so a need for their product. Now, the challenge is that whole space has been disrupted. EVs, yes, they're still around. They're still going to be a thing. Wind and solar inverters, this is used for. Those are still around and there, but there's massive headwinds in this space. And so as a result, it was a couple of years ago, about that time when you saw that peak, 90% or close to 90% of the revenue was coming from silicon carbide. And now that's diversified quite a bit. They've actually had a mix shift. That was from the financial year 2024 to now less than 40% of the revenue is from silicon carbide. Now they're actually going to continue to offer that product line, and there's no reason why they shouldn't. And they've seen some traction with some of their systems as well. But it's great that the reason why the share price is falling is because the opportunity just didn't materialize as quickly as the market perceived that it might. And so instead, the opportunity that's there right now, that they're on the cusp of, and I think that they have the lead as far as technology, because there's others in silicon carbide as well, is in gallium nitride. Now, if you look at it's abbreviated GaN, uppercase G, lowercase a, uppercase N. This is a medium that's oftentimes used for not just renewables like silicon carbide, which you can use it for a lot of other things, but like 70% of the application is all about renewables, EVs, charging stations, that sort of thing. Gallium nitride is far more diverse as far as product lines, but there's one in particular that has the market a little bit excited right now. And I bet you can guess it because of the title of this. It's AI, or specifically data centers as well. So gallium nitride is, of course, more efficient. So you use less power, and so you save a lot of money from that. It's also easier to cool than silicon carbide. And as a result, you see this being used quite a bit. Now, there's estimates all over the place as far as how big gallium nitride will be and what the CAGR will be over the next 5 to 10 years. But usually that's between 25 to 35% of most people's estimates. If you look on an app like the Quarter app, where you just search for gallium nitride, you're not even looking for Air Test System. It's being talked about by a lot of different people as well. And that's being massively ramped up just because we are in this AI arms race. where they're trying to build out these data centers as rapidly as possible. They want the best product. They want the best test system. And it's high stakes that they can't afford failure for. And so they go with systems like Air. Now, silicon carbide had a lot more competition, even though Air carved out a little niche. Gallium nitride is where Air Test Systems is differentiated. I believe it was 2, maybe 3 quarters ago, the CEO, Gain Erickson, basically said that they had a customer that approached them and said that they would love for Air Test Systems to do wafer level testing for gallium nitride. Before, instead of that entire wafer, they would end up only being able to test 1 unit at a time, which means either A, you have to speed up your testing rapidly, and as a result, you're not going to be nearly as accurate with the burn-in solution, or you can slow the process down and just buy a whole lot of units. It's just really inefficient no matter how you slice it. And so Gain and his company said, hey, we're not sure that this is even technologically possible, but we'll give it a try. And so they were very cautious with what they told investors. And then you look at the next couple of quarters where they went from cautious to cautiously excited to excited and ecstatic, because they have, as of this date, literally the only wafer level burn-in solution for gallium nitride, this massively growing, rapidly growing semiconductor offering. And so instead of just 1 wafer, by the way, they're able to stack it. I believe it's 9 right now wafers that they could stack on their machines, up to 18 with some of the newer units that are coming out. And this isn't just a pie in the sky type of system where they're like, hey, maybe there's going to be a market for it. You'll need to look at the earnings call transcript for Air Test System and or some of the press releases. We'll actually look at a couple of those in a moment. But they have a high degree of detail as far as what they expect, what the opportunities look like as well. Now, before we look at that, I also want to go over silicon photonics. Silicon photonics is a technology that I frankly don't understand super well. It sounds like, futuristic stuff and Star Trek, and just, it's odd. But silicon photonics is a chipset that's getting a lot of use or a lot of looks as well. TSM, for instance, has launched a product line and is starting to ramp that up. And there's a lot of other silicon manufacturers that are ramping this up. Silicon photonics is used, of course, in telecom. It's used in data centers as well. It's used in high-speed computing. LiDAR uses it. This also has a massive CAGR. It's a much smaller market so far, but that's kind of like the future. So this isn't exactly right, because all of these are going to be used, will continue to be used. But you can think of silicon carbide as what's kind of old. It's not. It's better applications as far as high voltage applications than traditional silicon. So that's kind of the past of Air Test System. That's why they were lumpy. They still do have a lot of revenue. They're still going to do quite well with the products that they have. The present and near future is gallium nitride, which they have very clear differentiation over all of their competition. And we'll talk about that TAM here in just a second. And also silicon photonics, which they're just beginning to be on the cutting edge of that, but they're ready to go as far as their test systems. And that's an area that's poised to grow in the future as well. Now, they also do have some revenue from things like Fox CP, which is their burn-in test system, basically for their hard drive disk sets. This is not an area that has grown really rapidly for Air Test Systems. They had their first production order back in 2019, and they didn't have any follow-up orders at that point. Now, they have had a follow-up order from one of the leaders that's in the space. They always keep the names hidden, but they tell you basically the size of it, and you can make some guesses. But they say that this customer is one of the top suppliers of data storage devices worldwide. So Western Digital, maybe Seagate, that sort of thing gives you the idea. Toshiba possibly too. I know that they do quite a bit. So they ended up having that customer, whoever it is, make multiple orders, and also say that they plan to both purchase more systems, both in the short term and over the long term as well. So a bit of a mixed shift over the last year, which is why if you look at their revenue, it's not particularly exciting and be like, man, why are you even in this company? It was profitable when I was looking at it before. A quarter reported, and as a result, the previous quarter, which did really well, fell off. And so let's take a look here. Here's the revenue, and you can see this is not massive revenue. This is in millions. 16 million, 13 million, 13 million, 18 million, 14 million. Now, part of the reason why it's not as lumpy as you would expect, because some of these units have a price tag of around $4 million on average for air test systems, but it's because they have recurring revenue. At one point, this was a year or so ago, 60% of their revenue for one of the quarters that they reported. I don't remember which one was actually in recurring revenue. They have wafer pack modules, die pack modules. The most simple way to think of this is it's kind of like Air selling you a printer, and then you have to buy the toner from them as well as you run out. It's not a perfect metaphor, but that's the best way to think about it. The more of these units that they sell, the more recurring revenue that they actually get as well. So gallium nitride, let's look at this again. Revenue is right here in the low millions. And what's really exciting is this comment right here from one of the analysts. They asked about the AI market. They said the AI opportunity seems quite significant. And that's really why Air Test Systems is running, is that. And they've had multiple orders for multiple of their systems, plus a quarter where, frankly, some of the revenue didn't matriculate as a result of the tariffs basically slowing down a purchase that was in process. So Gain here was actually asked and said, as far as what they're actually looking at, they said with the gallium nitride specifically, when we were talking AI, it's the gallium nitride. 350 of their systems was the TAM. As the average sell price of about $4 million each. Now, let's say, and there's a lot more details here. I mean, like you can just look at this all day. Now, what does this mean for Air Test Systems? Let's assume, for instance, that perhaps they don't get that full market. Now, right now, they have a clear technology differentiation. And so I think that they'll be positioned quite well. But let's say that they sell 150 of these units and they get the average sell price of $4 million. You're looking at $600 million in terms of sales. And that's not including the recurring revenue. So let's go back here and look at this revenue. Is that a big difference over the 13, 14, $18 million quarters that they're making? Yes. That doesn't mean that they're going to get all of that at once. They'll capture the whole market, that's going to be a year's worth of revenue. But what I'm trying to say is this yearly revenue, which did, by the way, tick up because of silicon carbide, this is just them just getting started. What looks like yearly revenue right now might look like a bad quarter for them in the not too distant future. And that's just with gallium nitride. Now, as far as what's actually happening with Air as well. So we have two press releases that are fairly recent, which I think are very relevant. So Gain Erickson, again, is a CEO. If you go and if you look at the earnings call, it's so detailed. It's refreshing the way that they allow questions to be asked and they answer them with crystal clear clarity. They're also very careful to not overpromise and underdeliver. So he was alluding to in that earnings call that they basically had some people that were very interested in this product. The demand seemed like it was really ramping up, but there's a bit of a sell cycle here. So they can't just, you can't just hop on their website and be like, I'm going to go ahead and order one of these, get it Prime Day delivery in 2 days. There we go. They have to qualify you as a customer. What that means is basically you show them what you want to have tested. They are able to check it out in-house and make sure that they're able to do that for you. And then you approve everything and then you make your order as well. So this is usually like 1, maybe 2 quarter type of sell cycle. Now, some customers line up and they'll have a booking and then they'll end up buying it or actually getting the product in another quarter or two. So it's a bit lumpy despite that recurring revenue. So anyway, this materialized after the earnings call that a major hyperscaler expands AI processor production capacity with additional Air test package level tests and burn-in systems. And so in this case, this is, again, the gallium nitride. And these are the Sonoma units that were acquired basically through the acquisition of Incal, an acquisition that they recently completed as well. And Gain's comments here, I think, are very important to understand. So he says, we're very pleased that this happened. These orders demonstrate both the value of our ultra high powered system for volume production, burn in of AI processors, and the growing relationships we're building with customers at the forefront of the AI market. You look at the events, they're at all of these different events. They're becoming better known, especially with the differentiation that they have with gallium nitride. And so they mention this. And this, by the way, is not just them throwing out a bunch of names, but they say, all these different hyperscalers, basically, they need this type of product. And then they finally mentioned here AI semiconductor market is growing at an extraordinary pace. And you can just look at the massive ramp here. A 30% CAGR is what they have it at. And so it talks about the differentiation of the product as well. Now, that's great that they had this, that they launched this. Multiple units of Sonoma that are being shipped out as well. And so we're going to see that revenue really spike up over the next couple of quarters. But this right here was the day after. It's Aehr Test Systems announces wafer level burn-in and test application evaluation order from leading AI processor supplier. So this right here includes the custom wafer pack, which are reoccurring revenue as well. WLBI is the wafer level burn-in, by the way. And so there's a high degree of precision right here. Now, this right here was a comment from Gain, and he said, we believe this represents a significant step forward in our engagement with this top tier AI processor supplier. And so a lot of these are ones that are evaluated and they're like, hey, everything checks out. We can certainly help you. And this is an evaluation order, by the way. It's something that they pay for. And again, the CEO is always a little bit cautious. He's like, hey, there's no guarantee, but the evaluation will take 3 to 6 months as well. And you'll see a lot of that. Longer sales cycle, sticky customer. And this is technical enough as well. There's so many details, by the way, here, that it's tough to repeat what Aehr Test System does. I'm not saying that no competition will exist at all as far as testing on the wafer level for gallium nitride. The market's large enough that probably a few people are working on the problem, but hard problems that were very challenging to overcome, that are finally overcome, means that you have a quite nice moat. This is also a very sticky product. Hyperscalers are not looking at getting in this business because they're, again, in the middle of a gold rush as it relates to semiconductors. And so they're busy creating the next best chipset. And as a result, they want the best technology to be able to do their tests here. So this is where Aehr is at as a company. It looks like it's very tiny, and it really is. And the opportunity is absolutely massive, but it's going to be lumpy. It is going to take time. Now, you wouldn't know it because of this chart right here, especially if you look at year to date or we look at the last month. I mean, it's just, I'm glad that I was buying down here. My average is like 17 and some change. But if I didn't have my position finished for Aehr Test Systems, I would be very comfortable buying here at $25 a share. Again, the revenue is so small relative to where they'll go here in the near future. It looks like net income will spike up massively. We've seen that before when they have some larger quarters that hit. All of a sudden, they spike up massively. The acquisition is done as well. Now, there are some legal expenses that they're having to spend to protect some of their patents over in China that they mentioned in the earnings call. There is a possibility of an equity raise as well. They've done this in the past. It's been a while. Now, they have actually, it's very important to show this. They have a lot more cash than debt, but they've used a large chunk of that cash as well for that Incal acquisition. So it wouldn't be completely untoward if they end up saying, well, let's go ahead and do a capital raise. If that actually means that they'll accelerate the revenue faster as a result, I'm all for it, but that's just something to be aware of. Now, the other possibility too is, again, this is a company that has less than $1 billion in market cap. It's a micro cap. Could they be acquired by one of their competitors like Teradyne? That's always a possibility. Now, the good thing is, as a shareholder, if your company is acquired, usually that means some very good things for you as well. But it's something to be aware of. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to hold this for 10 years out, I plan to hold this a long time. I think it'll probably take about 2 years to really play out and be able to see that gallium nitride ramp. But I plan to hold this 5 to 10 years, maybe even longer as well. I think we're in a massive AI tsunami, not just wave. And this is one of those companies that you might not think about in terms of AI, but they're so well positioned. They're very well run. Gain is very well thought of in the as far as leadership in this space. And there's a lot of customers that they have right now that are very sticky, that are making more orders, and also a lot of new customers that are testing out these systems. As far as there's a couple of risks to know here beyond what we've mentioned, with the equity raise, there is some competition. Of course, they're very volatile because it's a micro cap. And one of those is, of course, customer concentration. Now, they're a little bit more diversified. Their product line is also a bit more diversified than they used to be. But this is from the 10K. And so it says here that in the past, so sales to their 5 largest customers accounted for 77, 93, and 97 of their net sales in fiscal 2025, which they have a weird fiscal year, by the way. So this is like 9 months ago, 2024 and 2023. And during fiscal 2025, 2 customers accounted for approximately 39% and 15% of the company's net sales. I bet you can guess the number 1 there. Probably the number 2 as well. Not naming it. Could be anybody, right, guys? But what this is basically showing is that the concentration risk is less than it used to be back in 2023 as well. Where back in 2023, 2 customers accounted for approximately 79% and 10% of their net sales. So that had a high degree of risk. Now, not so much. And they will continue to trend that direction because of the different test systems, the different product lines that they offer, and the many, many different applications there are for gallium nitride. Also, silicon photonics as well, as that industry and space grows out of. And so I expect that this is going to be a risk that disappears over time, but it is something certainly to be aware of as well. Now, as far as last thoughts here with Air Test Systems. Now, the reason why I'm happy to buy it and hold it right here, it's very volatile. Option chain, by the way, is not great, so I'm not doing it as a swing position. But I just see such a tremendous opportunity. Now, let's go ahead and look at some of the growth metrics, which are not pretty, and valuation metrics as well. Now, part of it is this is a micro cap with a very lumpy revenue. If you're looking at this a few months ago, they had a beautiful PE ratio. Now they don't. But again, that's simply because they're very lumpy. Now, that's on a yearly basis. The silicon carbide headwinds and also the acquisition means that net income has actually been negative recently. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I actually think that that's going to invert fairly soon. And again, they do have more cash than debt. They might do an equity raise, as I mentioned before. Operating expenses, by the way, are ticking up a bit as well. But that's frankly what you want to see with a company that has an edge. As their revenue grows, you would like to see them, of course, be responsible. They're not being ridiculous here, but you can see it's a little bit higher than it was before. As far as the valuation, can't really do PE because it's negative. Price of sales, 12.6, which is on the high side. Gross margin, by the way, that's something that's pretty standard for actually hardware versus software. There are some unicorns that are exceptions. This is not one of those. So, and if you look at 3-year revenue growth, I mean, it's the silicon carbide, the SiC, simply because they went for that, which I admire, but that whole space shifted in a hurry. And as a result, they are left with a little bit slower growth, actually negative growth over the last 3 years as well. But I think that these things are about ready to turn around. That's one of the reasons why you've seen this massive chart here where the stock has just been up and to the right for a while. It's not always been like this. Again, 5 years out, went on this massive run, and of course it shifted and pivoted as well. So it's just something to keep on your mind. Is it's not super cheap right here, at least by the metrics. But I think, again, if you look at the opportunity, make sure you look and you vet the things that I've shared and also what the CEO has shared as well. But the opportunity ahead of Air Test Systems is absolutely immense. Again, with just gallium nitride, if they end up selling only 150 of those units, which is a lot for them, that's a massive amount of revenue that more than triples their revenue growth over the next 5 years alone, without anything else. That's pretty exciting. So as far as where I'm at with Air Test Systems, again, it's now over 5% of my portfolio just because the stock price has run so much. If it falls back, I might buy a couple hundred more shares. I'm not going to make it a massive piece of my portfolio because, again, there is risk here because of the size of the company, and they have to execute to be able to get this massive opportunity with gallium nitride. I also don't have a clear enough vision on the competition. There's a lot of smaller, very niche competitors, but they're a one-for-one as it relates to both the package part size and also the wafer level and the wafer level testing and gallium nitride, which is really their next biggest growth vector. So I am happy to hold this as long as they continue to execute. It's got a longer sales cycle, but a high level of detail and a high level of transparency as well from the CEO, which I really do appreciate. Makes it a lot easier to buy and hold and wait for them to execute, which certainly they are doing. We had confirmation of that twice this month. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this a play that you're going to look more into and get into? Perhaps you've been in air test systems and you know a lot more about it than I do. If so, I'd love to talk to you because I do have some questions. All the time I'm trying to learn more about companies that I own, especially when it's on a little bit newer side. So I'll probably cover this a few times over the next few months as well. And I'll also put some more details on X. Thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing. And until next time, happy investing.